What if I told you that the difference between someone who achieves extraordinary success and someone who remains stuck in mediocrity has nothing to do with talent, luck, or circumstances? What if the real secret to peak performance lies not in what elite performers do, but in how they think? Every day, millions of people work hard, set goals, and chase their dreams. Yet only a tiny fraction ever reach the pinnacle of their potential. The rest remain trapped in cycles of average performance, wondering why their efforts don't translate into breakthrough results. Here's the truth that will change everything. Peak performance is not about working harder or having more talent. It's about rewiring your mind to think, process, and respond like the elite. It's about understanding the psychology that separates champions from everyone else. The most successful athletes, entrepreneurs, artists, and leaders don't just perform differently, they think differently. Their minds operate on completely different principles than the average person. While most people are reactive, elite performers are strategic. While most people crumble under pressure, elite performers thrive in it. While most people see obstacles, elite performers see opportunities. This isn't motivational theory. This is hard science. Neuroscientists, sports psychologists, and performance researchers have spent decades studying what makes elite minds tick. What they've discovered is revolutionary. Peak performance is a learnable skill. The psychological patterns that create extraordinary results can be identified, understood, and replicated. By the time you finish this audiobook, you will not think the same way you do right now. You will understand the exact mental frameworks that elite performers use to achieve consistent excellence. You will learn how to condition your mind for peak performance, how to thrive under pressure, and how to maintain that level of excellence over time. But here's what separates this from every other performance book you've encountered. This isn't about temporary motivation or quick fixes. This is about permanent psychological transformation. You're going to learn how to literally rewire your brain to operate at the same level as the world's top performers. The journey begins now. Are you ready to discover what your mind is truly capable of? Chapter 1. The Performance Paradox. Why talent isn't enough. Here's a question that will disturb everything you think you know about success. Why do some of the most naturally gifted people in the world fail to achieve peak performance, while others with average talent rise to extraordinary heights? Walk into any gym, boardroom, or creative space, and you'll see it everywhere. The naturally gifted athlete who can't perform when it matters, the brilliant executive who chokes during crucial presentations, the talented artist who can't seem to break through to the next level. Meanwhile, people with half their natural ability are dominating their fields. This is the performance paradox, and it reveals the most important truth about achievement. Talent is not the determining factor in peak performance. In fact, relying too heavily on talent can actually prevent you from reaching your potential. The research is clear and disturbing. Studies of elite performers across every field show that natural ability accounts for less than 20% of the difference between good and great. The other 80%. It's all mental. It's psychology. It's how your mind processes pressure, failure, feedback, and opportunity. Think about this. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. Steven Spielberg was rejected from film school 3 times. Oprah Winfrey was told she was unfit for television news. J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter manuscript was rejected by 12 publishers. Steve Jobs was fired from Apple, the company he founded. What these legends understood, and what most people never learn, is that peak performance is built in the mind, not born in the genes. The biggest lie we've been sold is that some people are just naturally better than others. That champions are born, not made. That you either have it or you don't. This belief system keeps millions of people stuck in mediocrity, accepting average results because they think they don't have what it takes. But here's what elite performers know that others don't. Your mind is the ultimate performance tool. Everything else, your skills, your knowledge, your experience, is just software running on this hardware. And just like any piece of technology, your mind can be optimized, upgraded, and programmed for peak performance. The difference between elite performers and everyone else isn't what they were born with. It's what they've trained their minds to do. While most people let their psychology work against them, elite performers have learned to make their psychology work for them. Let me show you exactly how this works. When faced with a high-pressure situation, the average person's mind goes into survival mode. Their thoughts become scattered. Their focus narrows to threats rather than opportunities, and their performance degrades. They're fighting against their own psychology. Elite performers experience the same physiological responses to pressure, but their minds interpret these signals completely differently. Where others see threat, they see opportunity. Where others feel anxiety, they feel excitement. Where others become paralyzed, they become energized. Same biology, completely different psychology. This isn't about positive thinking or mental toughness in the traditional sense. This is about understanding how your mind works and training it to operate in ways that enhance rather than sabotage your performance. The first principle of elite psychology is this: your mind doesn't distinguish between real and imagined experiences. When you vividly imagine performing at your peak, your brain creates the same neural pathways as if you were actually performing at that level. This means that how you think about a situation literally shapes your ability to perform in that situation. If you think about pressure as something that makes you nervous, your mind will create a nervous response. If you think about pressure as something that makes you sharp, your mind will create a sharp response. If you think about challenges as threats to avoid, your mind will prepare for retreat. If you think about challenges as opportunities to excel, your mind will prepare for peak performance. Elite performers have learned to control this process. They don't just hope their mind will work in their favor, they actively program it to do so. They understand that peak performance isn't about eliminating pressure, fear, or uncertainty. It's about training your mind to use these forces as fuel for excellence. The second principle is that your brain is constantly adapting based on what you focus on. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize and form new neural connections throughout your life. Every thought you think, every pattern you rehearse, every way you respond to challenges is literally rewiring your brain. Most people unknowingly train their brains for average performance. They rehearse doubt, practice anxiety, and reinforce limiting beliefs. Then they wonder why they can't break through to the next level. They've literally wired their brains for mediocrity through years of suboptimal thinking patterns. Elite performers do the opposite. They deliberately train their brains for excellence by consistently rehearsing peak performance patterns. They visualize successful outcomes, practice confident responses to challenges, and systematically eliminate limiting beliefs. They understand that the quality of their thinking determines the quality of their neural programming, which determines the quality of their performance. The third principle is that your psychology is not fixed. The way you currently think, feel, and respond to challenges is not permanent. It's simply the result of years of unconscious conditioning, and what has been conditioned can be reconditioned. This is where most people get it wrong. They think that changing their performance means changing their actions. Work harder, practice more, acquire new skills. But elite performers know that lasting change happens at the psychological level first. Change your mind and your performance will follow. Try to change your performance without changing your mind, and you'll always revert back to your old patterns. The performance paradox exists because most people are trying to solve a psychological problem with physical solutions. They think that working harder, practicing me, or acquiring new skills will automatically lead to peak performance. But without the right psychology, all that effort is wasted. Consider the phenomenon of choking under pressure. This happens when skilled performers suddenly lose their abilities during crucial moments. Their technical skills haven't disappeared overnight. Their knowledge hasn't vanished. What's happened is that their psychology has shifted from a performance-enhancing state to a performance-inhibiting state. Elite performers understand that psychology is the foundation everything else is built on. They don't just train their bodies or develop their skills, they systematically develop their minds. They study their own thought patterns, identify psychological weaknesses, and deliberately build mental strength. This is why naturally gifted people often struggle. They've never had to develop the psychological skills that peak performance requires. They've relied on talent for so long that they never learned how to manage pressure, overcome setbacks, or maintain focus when things get difficult. When naturally gifted people encounter situations where talent alone isn't enough, they often crumble because they lack the psychological tools to handle adversity. They're like high-performance cars with faulty steering systems, all the power in the world, but no way to control it effectively. Meanwhile, people with average talent are forced to develop these psychological skills from the beginning. They learn early that success isn't given, it's earned through mental toughness, strategic thinking, and psychological resilience. By the time they reach elite levels, they have psychological advantages that can't be matched by talent alone. The most successful people in any field are not the most talented. They're the most psychologically prepared. They understand that peak performance is an internal game played with external skills. Master the internal game, and the external results will follow. Take Tom Brady, widely considered one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. He was the 199th pick in the 2000 NFL Draft. 198 players were considered more talented. Yet he went on to win 7 Super Bowl championships, more than any other player in history. What separated Brady wasn't superior physical gifts, it was superior psychological preparation. Brady developed an obsession with mental conditioning that went far beyond what most athletes consider normal. He studied film not just to understand opponent strategies, but to program his mind for every possible scenario he might face. He practiced visualization so intensively that he could mentally rehearse entire games before playing them. He developed pre-performance routines so precise that they automatically triggered peak performance states. Most importantly, Brady understood that his mind was his most important asset. While other players focused primarily on physical conditioning, Brady spent equal time conditioning his psychology. He worked with sports psychologists, studied mental performance techniques, and systematically eliminated any thought patterns that didn't support excellence. The result? Brady's performance actually improved with age, something that should be impossible based on physical factors alone. His psychological conditioning allowed him to overcome the natural decline in physical abilities that affects all athletes. His mind became so optimized for peak performance that it could compensate for physical limitations. This same principle applies across all domains of human performance. Warren Buffett became the world's most successful investor not because he had superior mathematical abilities, but because he developed superior psychological discipline. While other investors were driven by emotion, fear, and greed, Buffett trained his mind to remain calm, rational, and focused on long-term value. Serena Williams dominated tennis for over 2 decades, not just because of her physical gifts, but because she developed an unshakable psychological foundation. She learned to use pressure as motivation, to transform setbacks into comebacks, and to maintain unwavering self-belief even when facing adversity. Elon Musk built multiple billion-dollar companies, not because he had superhuman intelligence, but because he conditioned his mind to think in ways that most people consider impossible. He trained himself to see solutions where others see problems, to remain persistent when others give up, and to maintain long-term vision when others get distracted by short-term obstacles. These examples illustrate a fundamental truth. Elite performance is not about having superior innate abilities. It's about developing superior psychological capabilities. It's about training your mind to operate in ways that consistently generate excellent results. The performance paradox reveals that talent can actually be a disadvantage if it prevents you from developing the psychological skills that sustained excellence requires. Talented people often become complacent, assuming that their natural abilities will always be enough. They don't develop the mental toughness to handle failure, the psychological discipline to maintain consistency, or the strategic thinking to continuously improve. Meanwhile, people who start with less natural ability are forced to develop these psychological capabilities. They learn that success requires mental discipline, strategic thinking, and psychological resilience. They develop what researchers call earned confidence, confidence based on proven ability to overcome challenges through mental strength. This earned confidence is more powerful than confidence based on natural talent because it's grounded in developed capabilities rather than innate gifts. When someone with earned confidence faces a setback, they don't question their fundamental abilities. They simply apply the psychological tools they've developed to overcome the challenge. The implications of this are profound. If peak performance is primarily psychological rather than biological, then anyone can develop the capabilities necessary for excellence. You don't need to be born with special gifts. You don't need to wait for lucky breaks. You don't need to hope that circumstances will align in your favor. What you need is to understand how elite psychology works and to systematically develop those psychological capabilities in yourself. You need to stop thinking like everyone else and start thinking like an elite performer. You need to abandon the limiting beliefs that talent determines destiny and embrace the empowering truth that psychology determines performance. Here's what this means for you. Everything you want to achieve is possible, regardless of your current level of natural talent. But you have to stop thinking like everyone else. You have to stop believing that success is determined by factors outside your control. You have to start understanding that your mind is the most powerful performance tool you have. The question isn't whether you have enough talent. The question is whether you're willing to develop the psychology of peak performance. Because once you understand how elite minds work, and once you begin training your own mind to operate at that level, there's no limit to what you can achieve. Your transformation begins with a simple but profound shift in perspective. Stop seeing yourself as limited by your current abilities, and start seeing yourself as someone who can develop any ability through the right psychological training. Peak performance isn't reserved for the naturally gifted. It's available to anyone willing to master the psychology that creates it. The only question is, are you ready to begin that mastery? Because everything changes once you understand that your mind, not your talent, determines your potential. The performance paradox is actually an opportunity paradox. While others limit themselves by focusing on talent they don't have, you can unlimit yourself by developing the psychological capabilities that create sustained excellence. The choice is yours, and the time to choose is now. Chapter 2. The Elite Mindset Framework: How Peak Performers Think. If you could peek inside the mind of an elite performer during their moment of greatest achievement, what would you find? How do their thoughts differ from yours when you're struggling to break through to the next level? The answer will revolutionize how you approach every challenge in your life. Elite performers don't just think differently, they operate from a completely different mental framework. While most people's minds are chaotic, reactive, and inconsistent, elite minds are structured, strategic, and systematic. This isn't about intelligence. Some of the smartest people in the world never achieve peak performance because they don't understand how to structure their thinking for excellence. Meanwhile, elite performers have learned to organize their mental processes in ways that automatically generate superior results. The Elite Mindset Framework consists of 7 core mental models that separate peak performers from everyone else. Master these 7 ways of thinking, and you'll begin to see opportunities where others see obstacles, solutions where others see problems, and possibilities where others see limitations. Understanding this framework requires first recognizing that your mind operates according to patterns, not random thoughts. Every response you have to challenges, every decision you make under pressure, every way you interpret events follows predictable patterns that have been programmed through years of experience. Most people have unconsciously programmed their minds with patterns that sabotage peak performance. They've learned to see challenges as threats, to interpret pressure as danger, to view setbacks as evidence of inadequacy. These patterns feel natural because they've been rehearsed for so long, but they're actually learned responses that can be changed. Elite performers have consciously programmed their minds with patterns that enhance performance. They've learned to see challenges as opportunities, to interpret pressure as energy, to view setbacks as information. These patterns didn't develop naturally, they were deliberately cultivated through systematic mental training. The first mental model is outcome independence. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive aspect of elite psychology, and it's why most people never reach their potential. While average performers are emotionally attached to specific outcomes, elite performers are detached from results and obsessed with process. Here's why this matters. When you're emotionally invested in a particular outcome, your mind becomes reactive rather than responsive. You start making decisions based on fear of failure rather than strategic thinking. You become tight, tentative, and unable to perform at your natural level. Think about a tennis player who desperately needs to win a match to qualify for a tournament. The emotional attachment to that outcome creates pressure that actually interferes with the very skills needed to win. Their serve becomes tentative, their shots lack conviction, and they make strategic errors because they're thinking about the consequence of losing rather than the process of winning. Elite performers understand that the moment you need a specific result, you've given that result power over your psychology. Your performance becomes conditional on external circumstances rather than internal excellence. This is why clutch performers seem to get better under pressure while others get worse. They're not performing for the outcome, they're performing for the process. Consider Michael Jordan taking the final shot in a crucial game. He wasn't thinking about the championship, the legacy implications, or what would happen if he missed. He was thinking about his form, his fundamentals, his preparation. His mind was completely absorbed in the process of shooting the ball correctly, not the outcome of whether it went in. This outcome independence doesn't mean elite performers don't care about results. They care deeply, but they understand that the best way to achieve great results is to focus entirely on the process that creates those results. They know that outcomes take care of themselves when the process is right. Developing outcome independence requires training your mind to find satisfaction in excellent execution, regardless of the result. It means learning to measure success by the quality of your effort and thinking rather than by external achievements. It means developing what psychologists call process confidence, confidence in your ability to execute well, independent of whether that execution produces the desired outcome. The second mental model is anti-fragility. This concept, developed by scholar Nassim Taleb, describes systems that don't just survive stress, they actually get stronger because of it. Elite performers have trained their minds to be anti-fragile. They don't just handle pressure, setbacks, and challenges. They use these forces to become better. While most people see obstacles as problems to avoid, elite performers see obstacles as information to process. They understand that every challenge contains valuable data about how to improve. They don't just bounce back from setbacks, they bounce forward, using each difficulty as a stepping stone to higher levels of performance. This anti-fragile mindset is what allows elite performers to thrive in uncertain, high-pressure environments. While others are trying to control circumstances, elite performers are adapting to and leveraging whatever circumstances they face. They've learned that strength comes not from avoiding difficulty, but from transforming difficulty into advantage. Consider how elite athletes respond to injuries. While most people see injury as purely negative, elite athletes often use injury periods to develop other aspects of their performance. They might focus on mental training, study strategy, or develop skills they normally wouldn't have time to work on. They transform the setback into an opportunity for growth in different areas. Anti-fragility requires developing a fundamentally different relationship with adversity. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" elite performers ask, "How can I use this to become better?" Instead of seeing stress as something to minimize, they see it as something to optimize. Instead of viewing uncertainty as threatening, they view it as energizing. The third mental model is systems thinking. While most people focus on events and outcomes, elite performers focus on the systems and processes that create those outcomes. They understand that peak performance isn't a single event. It's the result of multiple interconnected systems working together. Elite performers think in terms of inputs and outputs. They know that if they control the inputs, the right preparation, the right mindset, the right process, the outputs will take care of themselves. They don't leave performance to chance. They engineer it through systematic thinking. This systems approach is what makes elite performers so consistent. They're not relying on inspiration, motivation, or luck. They've built systems that generate excellence regardless of how they feel on any given day. Their performance becomes predictable because it's based on repeatable processes rather than random factors. Consider how elite performers approach preparation. They don't just practice randomly or when they feel like it. They've developed systematic preparation protocols that ensure they're always ready to perform. These systems account for physical preparation, mental preparation, strategic preparation, and recovery. Every aspect of their performance is systematized. Systems thinking also means understanding that small changes in process can create large changes in outcomes. Elite performers are constantly refining their systems, looking for marginal improvements that compound over time. They understand that excellence is built through the accumulation of small optimizations rather than through dramatic changes. The fourth mental model is growth orientation. Elite performers have fundamentally different relationships with failure, feedback, and learning than average performers. While most people see failure as evidence of inadequacy, elite performers see failure as data for improvement. This isn't just about having a positive attitude toward failure. It's about having a completely different cognitive framework for processing setbacks. Elite performers understand that failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of success. Every failure contains information about how to perform better next time. Elite performers are also obsessed with feedback. While most people avoid criticism or become defensive when receiving it, elite performers actively seek out the most honest, direct feedback possible. They understand that the quality of your feedback determines the speed of your improvement. This growth orientation extends to how elite performers view their own abilities. While most people have fixed ideas about their capabilities, elite performers see their abilities as dynamic and improvable. They don't say, "I'm not good at this." They say, "I'm not good at this yet." The growth orientation requires developing what psychologists call learning resilience, the ability to maintain curiosity and openness even when receiving difficult feedback or experiencing setbacks. It means training your ego to derive satisfaction from growth rather than from being right or appearing competent. The fifth mental model is present moment mastery. Elite performers have learned to fully inhabit the present moment during performance. While most people's minds are scattered between past mistakes and future concerns, elite minds are completely focused on what's happening right now. This present moment awareness is what allows elite performers to access flow states, those peak performance states where everything clicks and performance becomes effortless. Flow can only happen when your attention is completely absorbed in the current moment. Elite performers develop this present moment mastery through deliberate training. They practice bringing their attention back to the present whenever it wanders. They learn to recognize when their minds are drifting and have techniques for immediately refocusing. Present moment mastery also means learning to process information without getting emotionally attached to it. Elite performers can notice mistakes, setbacks, or challenges without letting those observations trigger emotional reactions that interfere with performance. They develop what researchers call detached awareness, the ability to observe without becoming reactive. The sixth mental model is strategic patience. Elite performers understand the difference between being patient and being passive. Strategic patience means maintaining long-term focus while taking aggressive action in the present moment. It means being willing to invest time and effort in capabilities that won't pay off immediately, but will create significant advantages over time. Most people lack strategic patience. They want immediate results and become discouraged when improvement takes time. They switch strategies too quickly, abandon difficult development work when progress seems slow, and make short-term decisions that undermine long-term success. Elite performers have learned to think in terms of development cycles rather than immediate outcomes. They're willing to spend months or years building capabilities that will serve them for decades. They understand that compound improvement takes time but creates exponential results. Strategic patience also means staying committed to your process even when others don't understand or support your approach. Elite performers often pursue development strategies that seem unnecessary or excessive to outsiders. They're willing to be misunderstood in the short term to achieve excellence in the long term. The seventh mental model is identity integration. Elite performers don't just perform excellently, they become excellent. Their commitment to peak performance isn't something they do, it's something they are. This identity integration creates psychological consistency that supports sustained high performance. When excellence becomes part of your identity, maintaining high standards becomes automatic rather than effortful. You don't have to motivate yourself to perform well because performing well is simply how you operate. You don't have to force yourself to maintain discipline because discipline is who you are. Identity integration requires aligning your self-concept with your performance goals. Instead of saying, "I want to be successful," elite performers say, "I am someone who commits to excellence." Instead of, "I hope to improve," they say, "I am constantly evolving." Their language reflects an identity that assumes excellence rather than hoping for it. These 7 mental models work together to create what researchers call the elite performer's advantage. When your mind operates from this framework, several things happen automatically. First, you become more resilient under pressure because you're not emotionally attached to specific outcomes. Second, you learn and improve faster because you see setbacks as information rather than failures. Third, you perform more consistently because you're operating from systematic processes rather than random inspiration. But here's the crucial point. This framework doesn't happen by accident. Elite performers have deliberately trained their minds to think this way. They've practiced these mental models until they become automatic responses rather than conscious efforts. Most people's minds operate from a completely different framework, one that actually sabotages performance. They're outcome-dependent, fragile under pressure, event-focused rather than systems-oriented, fixed in their mindset about abilities, scattered in their attention, impatient with development, and inconsistent in their identity. This framework guarantees mediocre results, no matter how much talent or effort is applied. The good news is that mental models can be changed. Your current way of thinking is not permanent. It's simply the result of years of unconscious conditioning. Elite performers have learned to consciously condition their minds for excellence. This process requires understanding that your thoughts are not random. They follow patterns, and those patterns determine your performance. Change the patterns, and you change the performance. Elite performers have mastered the art of pattern recognition and pattern interruption. When they notice their minds moving toward outcome dependence, they redirect to process focus. When they feel themselves becoming fragile under pressure, they activate their anti-fragility training. When they catch themselves thinking in events rather than systems, they shift to systematic thinking. This isn't about positive thinking or motivation. It's about training your mind to operate from the same framework that elite performers use. It's about developing the mental discipline to think strategically rather than reactively. The elite mindset framework is not just a philosophy, it's a practical system for organizing your mental processes. When you begin thinking from this framework, you'll notice that challenges become easier to handle. Pressure becomes energizing rather than debilitating, and your performance becomes more consistent and predictable. Most importantly, you'll discover that peak performance isn't something that happens to you. It's something you create through the systematic application of elite mental models. Your mind becomes a tool for excellence rather than an obstacle to overcome. Implementing this framework requires consistent practice. You must train your mind just like you would train your body for physical performance. This means deliberately practicing each mental model until it becomes your natural response to performance situations. Start by identifying which mental models you currently lack. Most people struggle with outcome independence and strategic patience. They're too attached to immediate results and not committed enough to long-term development. Others struggle with anti-fragility and growth orientation. They avoid challenges and interpret setbacks as failures rather than learning opportunities. Once you've identified your weakest mental models, create specific training protocols for developing them. For outcome independence, practice focusing entirely on process during low-stakes activities. For anti-fragility, deliberately seek out mild challenges and practice finding growth opportunities in setbacks. For systems thinking, analyze your current processes and identify areas for systematic improvement. The key is to practice these mental models consistently until they become automatic. Elite performers don't have to consciously remember to think strategically. They've trained their minds to default to strategic thinking. They don't have to force themselves to focus on process. They've conditioned their minds to naturally focus on what they can control. This conditioning process takes time, but the results are permanent. Once you've programmed your mind with elite mental models, they become your new default patterns. Mediocre thinking becomes literally uncomfortable because your mind has been optimized for excellence. The question is, are you ready to think like an elite performer? Because once you begin operating from this framework, there's no going back to average thinking. Your mind will be programmed for excellence, and excellence will become your new normal. The elite mindset framework is your blueprint for joining the ranks of people who don't just occasionally perform well, but who consistently operate at peak levels. The choice to implement this framework is the choice to transform from someone who hopes for success to someone who systematically creates it. Chapter 3. Mental Conditioning Systems. Building Unbreakable Focus. Your ability to focus is under attack every moment of every day. Right now, as you're listening to this, your brain is being bombarded with distractions. Your phone is sending you notifications, your environment is full of stimuli, and your own thoughts are trying to pull your attention in dozens of different directions. This isn't an accident. We live in what researchers call the attention economy, where billions of dollars are spent specifically to capture and fragment your focus. Every app, every website, every piece of technology around you has been engineered by teams of neuroscientists and behavioral psychologists to be as distracting as possible. The average person checks their phone 96 times per day. That's once every 10 minutes during waking hours. Each time you check your phone, it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully refocus on your original task. This means that most people are in a constant state of partial attention, never able to access the deep focus states that peak performance requires. Meanwhile, peak performance in any field requires exactly the opposite: sustained, deep, unbreakable focus. Elite performers don't just have better focus than average people. They have fundamentally different relationships with attention itself. While most people are slaves to distraction, elite performers have learned to master and weaponize their attention. Here's the truth that will change everything about how you approach focus. Attention is not a fixed resource. It's a skill that can be developed, strengthened, and optimized. Your current level of focus is not your permanent level of focus. With the right training, you can develop the same quality of attention that elite performers use to achieve extraordinary results. But first, you need to understand what's really happening when you try to focus. Your brain has evolved over millions of years to scan the environment for potential threats and opportunities. This scanning mechanism, which once kept our ancestors alive, now works against sustained attention in modern environments. Your brain has two primary attention systems, the focused attention network and the default mode network. The focused attention network is what allows you to concentrate on specific tasks. It requires conscious effort and mental energy to maintain. The default mode network is what your brain does when it's not actively focused. It wanders, daydreams, and makes random associations. Most people live primarily in their default mode network. They think they're focusing, but they're actually just shifting between different types of distraction. Their attention is reactive rather than intentional. They focus on whatever grabs their attention, rather than consciously directing their attention where they want it to go. Elite performers have learned to consciously activate and strengthen their focused attention network. They don't just hope they'll be able to focus, they systematically train their ability to focus. They understand that attention is like a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it becomes. The neuroscience of attention reveals why most people struggle with focus and why elite performers excel at it. When you try to focus, you're actually engaging in a battle between different brain networks. The focused attention network, primarily located in the prefrontal cortex, must actively suppress the activity of other brain regions that are constantly generating distractions. This suppression requires mental energy, which is why sustained focus feels effortful. Most people exhaust their mental energy quickly because they haven't trained their brains for sustained attention. Elite performers have developed what researchers call attentional endurance, the ability to maintain focus for extended periods without mental fatigue. The first component of elite focus is selective attention. This is the ability to focus on relevant information while filtering out irrelevant information. In any performance situation, there are hundreds of potential things you could pay attention to. Elite performers have learned to automatically focus on the few things that actually matter while ignoring everything else. This selective attention is what allows elite athletes to perform in front of thousands of screaming fans. Elite executives to make crucial decisions despite organizational chaos, and elite artists to create despite environmental distractions. They've trained their minds to create a bubble of focus that filters out everything except what's essential for peak performance. Developing selective attention requires understanding the difference between relevant and irrelevant information in your specific performance domain. A basketball player needs to attend to the position of teammates and opponents, the location of the ball, and the time on the shot clock. They don't need to attend to the noise from the crowd, the cameras, or their internal worries about performance. Elite performers develop what researchers call attentional templates, mental maps of what deserves attention in different situations. These templates are developed through extensive experience and deliberate practice. They allow elite performers to instantly recognize what's important and what can be ignored. The second component is sustained attention. This is the ability to maintain focus over extended periods without losing intensity or clarity. While most people can focus intensely for short bursts, elite performers can maintain that same level of focus for hours when necessary. Sustained attention is what separates good performers from great performers. Anyone can focus for 5 minutes. Elite performers can focus for as long as the task requires. They've developed the mental endurance to maintain peak concentration, even when their minds want to wander. This sustained attention capability is built through progressive training, similar to how you build physical endurance. You start with shorter periods of intense focus and gradually extend the duration. Elite performers often train their attention for longer periods than they'll ever need in actual performance, creating a buffer of attentional capacity. The training process involves what psychologists call attention restoration cycles. You focus intensely for a specific period, then allow your mind to rest briefly before focusing again. Over time, you increase the length of the focus periods and decrease the length of the rest periods. The third component is flexible attention. This is the ability to shift focus quickly and accurately between different tasks or different aspects of the same task. Elite performers don't just focus deeply, they focus strategically. They know when to zoom in on details and when to zoom out for the big picture. Flexible attention is what allows elite performers to adapt in real time during performance. They can shift from analyzing their technique to reading their opponent to managing their internal state, all while maintaining optimal performance. Their attention becomes a precision instrument that they can adjust as needed. This flexibility requires developing what researchers call cognitive agility, the ability to switch between different mental processes without losing efficiency. Most people experience switching costs when they change focus from one task to another. Elite performers have minimized these switching costs through training. The fourth component is meta-attention. This is the ability to be aware of your own attention. Elite performers don't just focus, they monitor their focus. They can recognize when their attention is drifting and immediately bring it back to where it needs to be. Meta-attention is what makes elite focus self-correcting. Instead of losing focus for minutes or hours before realizing it, elite performers catch attention, drift within seconds. They've developed an internal monitoring system that constantly tracks the quality and direction of their attention. This meta-attentional awareness is developed through mindfulness training and reflective practice. Elite performers regularly assess the quality of their attention during and after performance. They become experts at recognizing the subtle signs that their focus is beginning to drift. Now here's how to develop these four components systematically. The first step is foundational attention training. Just like physical training, attention training requires specific exercises performed consistently over time. The most effective attention training combines meditation techniques with performance-specific focus exercises. Start with basic mindfulness meditation. Spend 10 minutes each day simply observing your breath. When your mind wanders, notice it without judgment and bring your attention back to your breath. This trains your meta-attention and your ability to redirect focus. This simple exercise is more powerful than most people realize. You're literally rewiring your brain to be more aware of where your attention goes and more capable of controlling it. Research shows that even 8 weeks of consistent mindfulness practice creates measurable changes in brain structure, particularly in areas responsible for attention and emotional regulation. Progress to focused attention meditation. Choose a single object, your breath, a sound, or a visual point, and maintain your attention on that object for increasing periods of time. Start with 2 minutes and gradually work up to 20 minutes or more. This trains sustained attention. During this practice, you'll notice your mind wandering repeatedly. This is normal and expected. The key is to notice when your mind wanders and gently bring it back to your chosen focus point. Each time you notice and redirect, you're strengthening your attention control. Then add attention switching exercises. Practice deliberately moving your attention between different objects or sensations. Focus on your breath for 30 seconds. Then shift to sounds in your environment for 30 seconds. Then to physical sensations in your body. This trains flexible attention. The key to these exercises is consistency rather than duration. 20 minutes of daily practice is more effective than 2 hours of practice once per week. Your brain adapts to consistent training much more effectively than to sporadic, intensive efforts. The second step is environmental design. Elite performers understand that willpower alone is not enough to maintain focus. They systematically design their environments to support rather than sabotage their attention. This means creating spaces that minimize distractions and maximize focus. Remove or silence all unnecessary technology during focus periods. Turn off notifications on all devices. Use airplane mode or leave devices in another room entirely. The mere presence of a smartphone, even when turned off, can reduce cognitive performance by up to 10%. Use lighting, temperature, and sound to create optimal conditions for concentration. Research shows that slightly cool temperatures, natural lighting, and either complete silence or consistent background noise create the best conditions for sustained attention. Arrange your physical space so that everything you need is easily accessible and everything you don't need is out of sight. Visual clutter creates mental clutter? Elite performers often work in minimalist environments that contain only what's necessary for the task at hand. Environmental design also means managing your digital environment. Elite performers are ruthless about eliminating digital distractions. They use website blockers, notification schedulers, and app restrictions to create distraction-free digital spaces. They also create what researchers call attention anchors, environmental cues that automatically trigger focused states. This might be a specific location, a particular piece of music, or a pre-focus ritual. These anchors help the brain transition quickly into focused attention states. The third step is cognitive load management. Your brain has limited processing capacity. The more mental energy you spend on irrelevant tasks, the less you have available for peak performance. Elite performers have learned to minimize cognitive load by automating or eliminating non-essential mental tasks. This includes developing routines and systems that reduce decision fatigue. Elite performers often wear the same clothes, eat the same foods, and follow the same pre-performance routines to conserve mental energy for what matters most. They understand that every decision you make depletes your mental resources. Steve Jobs famously wore the same outfit every day to eliminate one decision from his routine. Mark Zuckerberg does the same. These aren't eccentricities, they're strategic choices to preserve cognitive resources for more important decisions. Cognitive load management also means learning to externalize mental processes. Instead of trying to remember everything, elite performers use external systems to track information. Instead of trying to solve every problem in their heads, they use structured thinking tools. They free up mental bandwidth by using external tools for memory and analysis. Create checklists for routine tasks, use project management systems to track complex work, and develop templates for recurring activities. The goal is to automate as much as possible so your conscious attention can focus on the most important elements of performance. The fourth step is stress inoculation training. Focus degrades under stress unless you specifically train it to remain stable under pressure. Elite performers deliberately practice focusing in progressively more challenging conditions to build stress-resistant attention. Start by practicing focus exercises while slightly uncomfortable, sitting in an awkward position, in a noisy environment, or while slightly tired. Gradually increase the level of challenge until you can maintain focus even in highly distracting or stressful conditions. This stress inoculation training is what allows elite performers to maintain their focus during crucial moments. While others lose their ability to concentrate under pressure, elite performers actually become more focused because they've trained their attention to strengthen rather than weaken under stress. The training protocol involves creating artificial stress during focus practice. This might mean practicing concentration exercises while listening to distracting music, while having a conversation, or while performing physical exercise. The goal is to maintain quality attention, even when conditions are suboptimal. Elite performers also practice what researchers call attention switching under pressure. They practice rapidly moving their attention between different tasks while under time pressure or in distracting environments. This builds the cognitive flexibility needed to perform in chaotic real-world conditions. The fifth step is recovery protocols. Just like physical muscles, your attention needs recovery time to maintain peak performance. Elite performers have learned to strategically rest their attention to prevent mental fatigue and maintain long-term focus capacity. This includes taking regular breaks during extended focus periods, practicing relaxation techniques to restore mental energy, and getting sufficient sleep to maintain optimal brain function. Elite performers understand that sustainable peak performance requires balancing intense focus with adequate recovery. The most effective break structure is what researchers call ultradian rhythms, natural cycles of alertness that occur throughout the day. Most people can maintain peak focus for 90 to 120 minutes before needing a break. Elite performers structure their work around these natural cycles. During breaks, the key is to truly rest your attention rather than switching to different demanding tasks. This means avoiding screens, engaging in gentle physical movement, or practicing relaxation techniques. The goal is to allow your focused attention network to recover while engaging your default mode network in restorative activities. Sleep is perhaps the most critical component of attention recovery. During sleep, your brain clears metabolic waste products that accumulate during focused mental activity. Sleep deprivation dramatically impairs attention, even when you don't feel tired. Elite performers prioritize sleep as a performance tool, not just a biological necessity. The sixth step is advanced attention training. Once you've developed basic attentional skills, elite performers engage in more sophisticated training protocols that simulate the specific attention demands of their performance domain. For athletes, this might mean practicing sport-specific focus while under physical stress. For executives, it might mean practicing decision-making attention while managing multiple competing priorities. For artists, it might mean maintaining creative focus while under time pressure. These advanced protocols combine attention training with domain-specific skills to build what researchers call expert attention, the ability to maintain optimal focus in the specific conditions where peak performance is required. Elite performers also engage in what psychologists call attention challenges, deliberately seeking out situations that test their focus capabilities. This might mean working in increasingly distracting environments, maintaining attention for longer periods, or switching between more complex tasks. The result of this systematic attention training is what researchers call effortless concentration. Your ability to focus becomes so well developed that maintaining attention feels natural rather than forced. You can slip into deep focus states quickly and maintain them for as long as necessary. More importantly, you develop what elite performers call unbreakable focus. Your concentration becomes so strong that external distractions bounce off rather than penetrating your awareness. Your attention becomes a weapon that you can deploy strategically to achieve any goal. This isn't just about being able to focus better. This is about fundamentally changing your relationship with attention itself. Instead of being a victim of distraction, you become a master of focus. Instead of hoping you'll be able to concentrate, you know you can create intense focus on demand. The quality of your attention determines the quality of your life. Everything you achieve flows through your ability to focus. Master your attention, and you master your potential. Elite performers understand this, and now you do too. But developing unbreakable focus requires more than just training exercises. It requires understanding the deeper principles that govern attention and learning to apply them systematically in your life and work. Your focus is your superpower. It's time to train it like one. The systematic development of elite attention capabilities is not optional. If you want to achieve peak performance, it's essential. The question is, are you ready to commit to the kind of attention training that transforms average performers into elite ones? Chapter 4. The Pressure Protocol. Performing under extreme stress. Pressure reveals who you really are. It strips away pretense, exposes weaknesses, and separates those who merely talk about excellence from those who deliver it when it matters most. In pressure moments, average performers crumble while elite performers shine. But here's what most people don't understand about pressure. It's not actually pressure that determines performance. It's your relationship with pressure. The same physiological and psychological forces that destroy some people's performance actually enhance elite performers' abilities. Pressure is simply information. It's your body and mind's way of telling you that something important is happening. The question is, how do you interpret and use that information? Do you see pressure as a threat to avoid, or as a signal that it's time to elevate your game? Elite performers have developed what researchers call pressure privilege, the ability to use stress and pressure as performance enhancers rather than performance inhibitors. They don't just tolerate pressure, they actively seek it out because they've learned to transform stress into strength. This transformation doesn't happen by accident. Elite performers have systematically trained their minds and bodies to respond to pressure in ways that enhance rather than degrade performance. They've developed specific protocols for managing pressure that allow them to perform at their best when the stakes are highest. Understanding pressure requires first understanding what happens in your body and brain when you encounter high-stakes situations. When your brain perceives something as important or threatening, it activates what researchers call the stress response system. This system evolved over millions of years to help our ancestors survive life-threatening situations. The stress response begins in the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure in your brain that acts as your internal alarm system. When the amygdala detects potential threat or high importance, it sends signals to the hypothalamus, which activates your sympathetic nervous system. This activation triggers a cascade of physiological changes designed to prepare your body for peak physical performance. Your heart rate increases to pump more blood to your muscles. Your breathing becomes faster and deeper to deliver more oxygen. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline flood your system to provide energy and heightened alertness. Your muscles tense up in preparation for action. For our ancestors facing physical threats, these changes were perfect for survival. They provided the energy, strength, and alertness needed to fight or flee from danger. But in modern performance situations, these same physiological changes can either enhance or impair performance, depending on how you interpret and manage them. Most people interpret the stress response as a sign that something is wrong. They feel their heart racing and think they're nervous. They notice their breathing change and assume they're anxious. They feel muscle tension and believe they're not ready. This interpretation triggers additional stress because now they're not just dealing with the original pressure, they're also stressed about being stressed. Elite performers have learned to interpret these exact same physiological changes in completely different ways. When they feel their heart racing, they think, "I'm energized and ready." When they notice their breathing change, they think, "My body is preparing me for peak performance." When they feel muscle tension, they think, "My system is activated for excellence." Same physiology, completely different psychology. This reinterpretation is the foundation of elite pressure management, but it's just the beginning of a comprehensive system for transforming pressure into peak performance. The first component of the pressure protocol is physiological optimization. When you encounter pressure, your body automatically activates the stress response system. For most people, these changes interfere with performance because they don't know how to optimize them. Elite performers have learned to harness these changes rather than being overwhelmed by them. The first technique is strategic breathing. Elite performers use specific breathing patterns to maintain optimal physiological state under pressure. Instead of shallow, rapid breathing that increases anxiety, they use deep, controlled breathing that maintains calm alertness. The most effective pressure breathing technique is box breathing. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, then repeat. This pattern activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which counteracts the negative effects of stress while maintaining the positive effects. But box breathing is just one of several breathing techniques that elite performers use. For situations requiring high energy, they might use power breathing. Sharp inhales through the nose, followed by forceful exhales through the mouth. For situations requiring calm focus, they might use deep belly breathing. Slow, deep breaths that expand the diaphragm rather than the chest. Elite performers practice these breathing patterns until they become automatic. During pressure situations, they don't have to think about breathing. They just naturally fall into the pattern that optimizes their physiological state for the specific type of performance required. The second technique is progressive muscle optimization. Pressure causes muscle tension, but not all muscle tension is bad. Some tension is necessary for peak performance, while excessive tension interferes with fluid movement. Elite performers have learned to systematically optimize their muscle tension levels. This involves quickly scanning your body for areas of unnecessary tension and consciously relaxing those muscles while keeping the muscles you need for performance appropriately activated. Elite performers can do this in seconds, maintaining optimal physical state even in high-pressure situations. The process starts with developing body awareness, the ability to quickly and accurately assess your physical state. Elite performers practice body scans during low-pressure situations until they can instantly identify areas of tension or relaxation. Then they learn selective relaxation, the ability to release tension in specific muscle groups while maintaining appropriate activation in others. A tennis player might relax their shoulders and arms while maintaining core stability. A public speaker might relax their face and jaw while maintaining strong posture. The third technique is cardiovascular regulation. Your heart rate naturally increases under pressure, but elite performers have learned to optimize their heart rate for different types of performance. Some activities require high heart rates for maximum energy, while others require lower heart rates for precise control. Elite performers use specific techniques to either increase or decrease their heart rate as needed. To increase heart rate, they might use visualization of high-energy scenarios, rapid breathing techniques, or physical activation exercises. To decrease heart rate, they might use slow breathing, progressive relaxation, or calming visualizations. The key is developing heart rate awareness and control. Many elite performers train with heart rate monitors to understand how different techniques affect their cardiovascular state. They learn to recognize their optimal heart rate zone for different types of performance and develop techniques to reach that zone quickly. The second component of the pressure protocol is cognitive reframing. The story you tell yourself about pressure determines how pressure affects you. Most people have unconsciously programmed themselves to see pressure as dangerous, threatening, or overwhelming. Elite performers have learned to reframe pressure as exciting, energizing, and enhancing. This isn't about positive thinking. This is about strategic thinking. Elite performers understand that pressure is simply your body preparing you to perform at a higher level. Instead of interpreting the physical sensations of pressure as signs of danger, they interpret them as signs of readiness. When elite performers feel their heart rate increase before a crucial moment, they don't think, "I'm nervous." They think, "I'm ready." When they feel adrenaline flowing through their system, they don't think, "I'm anxious." They think, "I'm energized." When they feel heightened awareness, they don't think, "I'm overwhelmed." They think, "I'm dialed in." This cognitive reframing must be practiced repeatedly until it becomes automatic. During pressure situations, you don't have time to consciously choose your thoughts. Elite performers have trained their minds to automatically interpret pressure in ways that enhance rather than hinder performance. The reframing process involves several specific cognitive techniques. The first is pressure redefinition, changing how you define pressure situations. Instead of seeing them as tests of your worth, you see them as opportunities to express your capabilities. Instead of viewing them as chances to fail, you view them as chances to excel. The second technique is sensation reinterpretation, changing how you interpret the physical sensations of pressure. Instead of labeling rapid heartbeat as nervousness, you label it as readiness. Instead of calling muscle tension anxiety, you call it activation. Instead of describing heightened awareness as stress, you describe it as alertness. The third technique is outcome recontextualization, changing how you think about potential outcomes. Instead of focusing on what could go wrong, you focus on what could go right. Instead of thinking about the consequences of failure, you think about the process of success. Instead of worrying about judgment from others, you focus on expressing your best effort. These reframing techniques require consistent practice during low-pressure situations, so they become automatic during high-pressure moments. Elite performers regularly practice interpreting challenging situations in empowering ways until positive reframing becomes their natural response to pressure. The third component is attention management. Pressure naturally narrows your attention, but it often narrows it to the wrong things. Under pressure, most people focus on what could go wrong, what others might think, or the consequences of failure. This attention pattern guarantees poor performance. Elite performers have learned to direct their attention to exactly what needs to happen in the present moment. They focus on process rather than outcome, on execution rather than results, on what they can control rather than what they can't control. This requires developing what psychologists call attentional discipline, the ability to maintain focus on relevant information even when your mind wants to wander to irrelevant concerns. Elite performers practice this discipline until it becomes stronger than the natural tendency to focus on threats and worries. The attention management system involves several specific techniques. First is present moment anchoring, developing cue words or phrases that immediately bring your attention to the current moment. Elite performers might use words like now, here, or focus to redirect wandering attention. Second is process focusing, training your attention to focus on the steps of performance rather than the outcomes. Instead of thinking about winning or losing, you think about technique, strategy, and execution. Instead of worrying about results, you concentrate on doing what you've trained to do. Third is control identification, learning to rapidly identify what you can and cannot control in any situation, then directing your attention exclusively to what you can control. You can control your effort, your attitude, your preparation, and your response to circumstances. You cannot control others' performance, external conditions, or outcomes. The fourth component is ritual implementation. Elite performers use specific routines and rituals to create psychological stability in high-pressure situations. These rituals serve multiple functions. They provide familiar structure in unfamiliar situations. They activate practiced neural pathways that support peak performance, and they give elite performers a sense of control even when external circumstances are chaotic. Elite performers develop different rituals for different types of pressure situations. They have pre-performance rituals that prepare them mentally and physically for peak performance. They have during performance rituals that help them maintain optimal state when pressure peaks. They have recovery rituals that help them reset after intense pressure experiences. Pre-performance rituals might include specific warm-up routines, visualization sessions, breathing exercises, or mental preparation protocols. These rituals are practiced extensively during training, so they become automatic triggers for peak performance states. During performance rituals might include specific self-talk patterns, breathing techniques, or physical adjustments. These rituals help elite performers maintain optimal state even when external pressure is mounting. Recovery rituals help elite performers transition from high-pressure states back to normal functioning. These might include cool-down routines, reflection exercises, or relaxation techniques. The key to effective rituals is consistency and personal relevance. The ritual must be practiced enough to become automatic, and it must feel meaningful and effective to the individual performer. Generic rituals rarely work as well as personalized ones developed through experimentation and refinement. The fifth component is stress inoculation training. Elite performers don't just hope they'll be able to handle pressure. They systematically expose themselves to progressively higher levels of stress to build pressure resistance. This involves deliberately practicing skills in conditions that simulate the pressure they'll face during actual performance. They practice when tired, when distracted, when being evaluated, and when the stakes are artificially raised. They gradually increase the pressure level until the actual pressure situation feels manageable by comparison. Stress inoculation training is based on a simple principle. You can't perform under pressure you haven't practiced under. Elite performers make sure they've experienced and successfully managed pressure situations similar to what they'll face when it matters most. The training protocol involves creating increasingly challenging practice conditions. This might start with performing in front of small groups, then larger audiences. It might involve practicing with time constraints, then tighter deadlines. It might mean practicing with low stakes, then progressively higher stakes. The goal is not to eliminate the stress response, but to become comfortable performing well despite the stress response. Elite performers learn that they can maintain high performance even when experiencing significant physiological and psychological pressure. Elite performers also practice what researchers call failure recovery, the ability to maintain performance after making mistakes under pressure. They deliberately introduce mistakes into practice sessions and train themselves to recover quickly without losing focus or confidence. The sixth component is recovery acceleration. Pressure situations are metabolically and psychologically expensive. They require significant energy and create stress that must be processed and released. Elite performers have learned to accelerate their recovery from pressure situations so they can maintain peak performance over time. This includes immediate post-pressure rituals that help them transition from high stress to normal states, systematic relaxation techniques that help them process and release stress hormones, and strategic rest periods that allow their nervous systems to fully recover. Immediate recovery protocols help elite performers come down from high-pressure states safely and efficiently. This might involve specific breathing exercises, gentle physical movement, or mental relaxation techniques. The goal is to help the nervous system return to baseline without crashing. Longer-term recovery involves managing the cumulative effects of repeated pressure exposure. Elite performers understand that pressure tolerance can be depleted if not properly managed. They use strategic rest, stress management techniques, and lifestyle practices to maintain their capacity for handling pressure over time. The seventh component is pressure seeking. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive aspect of elite pressure management. While most people avoid pressure situations, elite performers actively seek them out. They understand that pressure is the only environment where they can develop and demonstrate their highest capabilities. Elite performers don't wait for pressure to find them. They create pressure situations through challenging goals, competitive environments, and high-stakes commitments. They use pressure as a training tool, not just something to endure during important moments. This pressure-seeking behavior serves multiple purposes. It provides regular opportunities to practice pressure management skills. It builds confidence through repeated success in pressure situations. It creates a mindset where pressure becomes familiar and comfortable rather than foreign and threatening. Pressure seeking also involves what psychologists call optimal stress exposure, deliberately exposing yourself to manageable levels of pressure that promote growth without causing damage. This is similar to how physical training works. You expose your body to manageable stress that promotes adaptation and strength. Elite performers regularly put themselves in situations that challenge their pressure tolerance. They volunteer for high-visibility projects, compete in challenging competitions, or take on responsibilities that push their comfort zones. They understand that growth happens at the edge of your current capabilities. The eighth component is performance state management. Elite performers have learned to create and maintain optimal internal states during pressure situations. They understand that peak performance requires specific combinations of energy, focus, confidence, and emotional regulation. This involves developing what researchers call state awareness, the ability to quickly and accurately assess your internal state. Elite performers can instantly recognize when their energy is too high or too low, when their focus is too narrow or too broad, when their confidence is too low, or their anxiety too high. Once they can recognize their current state, elite performers have techniques for adjusting it quickly and precisely. They might use energizing techniques to increase arousal, calming techniques to reduce excessive activation, focusing techniques to sharpen attention, or confidence-building techniques to enhance self-belief. State management also involves maintaining optimal internal conditions throughout performance, not just at the beginning. Elite performers have learned to make micro-adjustments to their internal state as conditions change during performance. The result of implementing the complete pressure protocol is what elite performers call pressure immunity. They become so skilled at managing pressure that it no longer has the power to degrade their performance. In fact, they often perform better under pressure than in low-pressure situations because pressure activates their most developed capabilities. This pressure immunity is not about eliminating the stress response. It's about transforming the stress response into a performance enhancer. Elite performers still feel pressure, but they've trained their minds and bodies to use that pressure as fuel for excellence. Most importantly, elite performers develop what researchers call pressure confidence, the deep certainty that they can perform at their best, regardless of external circumstances. This confidence comes not from hoping they'll handle pressure well, but from knowing they've developed the skills to thrive under any level of pressure. Pressure confidence is built through systematic exposure to progressively challenging situations, combined with consistent success in managing those situations. Elite performers accumulate evidence of their ability to perform under pressure, which creates unshakable belief in their pressure capabilities. The pressure protocol also creates what psychologists call anti-fragile performance, the ability to actually get stronger and perform better when exposed to pressure. While most people's performance degrades under stress, elite performers' abilities are enhanced by stress because they've learned to use it as a performance catalyst. This anti-fragile quality is developed through consistent application of all components of the pressure protocol. When you can optimize your physiology under pressure, reframe pressure as opportunity, manage your attention effectively, implement stabilizing rituals, train under progressive stress, recover efficiently, seek out challenging situations, and manage your performance state, pressure becomes a tool for excellence rather than an obstacle to overcome. Pressure is not your enemy. It's your opportunity to demonstrate what you're truly capable of. Elite performers understand this, and they've developed the systematic skills to make pressure work for them rather than against them. The only question is, are you ready to transform pressure from a performance barrier into a performance catalyst? Because once you master the pressure protocol, pressure becomes one of your greatest competitive advantages. The development of pressure mastery is not a luxury for elite performers. It's a necessity. In today's world, the ability to perform under pressure is becoming increasingly important across all domains of human achievement. Those who can thrive under pressure will have significant advantages over those who merely survive it. Chapter 5. The Recovery and Optimization Loop. Sustaining Peak Performance. Peak performance is not a single event, it's a sustainable system. The difference between someone who achieves excellence once and someone who achieves excellence consistently lies not in their ability to perform, but in their ability to recover, optimize, and perform again at the same high level. Most people think of recovery as simply resting between performances, but elite performers understand that recovery is actually a systematic process of rebuilding, refining, and optimizing their capacity for future peak performance. They don't just rest. They actively enhance their capabilities during recovery periods. This is the secret to sustained excellence. Elite performers have learned to make recovery itself a performance optimization tool. While others see downtime as lost time, elite performers use recovery periods to become stronger, smarter, and more capable than they were before. The recovery and optimization loop is based on a fundamental principle of high performance. You can only perform at the level you can recover to. If you can't fully recover from one peak performance, you can't deliver another peak performance. If you can't optimize during recovery, you can't improve over time. Understanding this principle requires recognizing that peak performance places enormous demands on every system in your body and mind. Your nervous system becomes depleted from intense focus and decision-making. Your muscular system becomes fatigued from physical demands. Your hormonal system becomes imbalanced from stress and effort. Your psychological system becomes taxed from pressure and emotional intensity. Most people either ignore these depletion effects completely or approach recovery haphazardly. They assume that time alone will restore their capabilities, or they engage in recovery activities randomly without understanding what their systems actually need. Elite performers have developed systematic protocols for restoring every system that peak performance depletes. They don't just wait to feel better, they actively accelerate their recovery through specific, targeted interventions. They understand that the quality of your recovery determines the quality of your next performance. Elite performers don't just manage their performance, they manage their entire performance cycle: preparation, execution, recovery, optimization, and preparation for the next performance. They understand that each phase is equally important for sustaining excellence over time. The recovery and optimization loop consists of 6 integrated components that work together to not only restore peak performance capacity, but to systematically enhance it over time. Master these components, and you'll develop the ability to perform at your peak repeatedly, rather than just occasionally. The first component of the recovery and optimization loop is physiological recovery. Peak performance places enormous demands on your body systems. Your nervous system, muscular system, cardiovascular system, and hormonal system all become depleted during intense performance periods. Understanding physiological recovery requires recognizing that your body is constantly working to maintain homeostasis, the stable internal conditions necessary for optimal function. Peak performance disrupts this homeostasis in predictable ways that require specific recovery interventions. The foundation of physiological recovery is strategic sleep. Elite performers don't just sleep more, they sleep smarter. They understand that sleep quality is more important than sleep quantity, and they've optimized their sleep environment and sleep habits to maximize recovery. Sleep is when your body performs most of its critical recovery processes. During deep sleep, your body releases growth hormone, which repairs muscle tissue and strengthens your immune system. Your brain clears metabolic waste products that accumulate during waking hours. Your nervous system processes and consolidates the experiences and learning from your performance. Elite performers have learned to optimize every aspect of their sleep for maximum recovery benefit. This includes maintaining consistent sleep schedules, even when traveling or facing irregular demands, creating sleep environments that optimize temperature, darkness, and quiet, and using pre-sleep routines that prepare their nervous systems for deep, restorative sleep. The optimal sleep environment for recovery is cooler than most people prefer, typically between 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Your body temperature naturally drops during sleep, and a cool environment supports this process. Elite performers often use cooling mattress pads, breathable bedding, and climate control to maintain optimal sleep temperature. Complete darkness is crucial for optimal sleep recovery. Even small amounts of light can interfere with melatonin production and sleep quality. Elite performers use blackout curtains, eye masks, and eliminate all sources of artificial light from their sleep environments. Sound management is equally important. Elite performers either create completely quiet environments or use consistent white noise to mask disruptive sounds. The key is consistency. Your brain adapts to consistent sound patterns but is disrupted by unexpected noises. Elite performers also understand the different stages of sleep and how each contributes to recovery. Deep sleep is crucial for physical recovery and memory consolidation. REM sleep is essential for emotional processing and creative problem solving. They structure their sleep to maximize time in these critical recovery stages. This involves timing their sleep to align with natural circadian rhythms, avoiding substances that interfere with sleep quality, and using strategic light exposure to optimize their sleep-wake cycles. Elite performers treat sleep as a performance tool, not just a biological necessity. The second element of physiological recovery is nutritional optimization. Elite performers use nutrition strategically to accelerate recovery and enhance future performance capacity. They don't just eat for energy, they eat for recovery, adaptation, and optimization. This includes consuming specific nutrients that support nervous system recovery, using meal timing to optimize hormone production and cellular repair, and staying properly hydrated to maintain optimal physiological function. Post-performance nutrition is particularly critical for elite performers. The first 30 to 60 minutes after intense performance represent a critical window for recovery optimization. During this time, your body is primed to absorb nutrients and begin repair processes. Elite performers consume specific combinations of proteins and carbohydrates during this window to maximize recovery. The protein provides amino acids for muscle repair and neurotransmitter production. The carbohydrates restore glycogen stores and support hormone production. Hydration is another critical component of nutritional recovery. Even mild dehydration can significantly impair recovery processes and future performance capacity. Elite performers monitor their hydration status and use strategic fluid intake to optimize recovery. Elite performers also understand that different types of performance create different nutritional demands. Mental performance depletes different nutrients than physical performance. High-pressure performance creates different nutritional needs than routine performance. They adjust their nutrition accordingly. The third element is active recovery. Elite performers don't just rest passively. They engage in activities that actively promote recovery while maintaining movement and circulation. This includes light exercise that promotes blood flow without creating additional stress, mobility work that prevents stiffness and maintains range of motion, and relaxation techniques that accelerate nervous system recovery. Active recovery is based on the principle that complete inactivity can actually slow recovery in some cases. Light movement promotes circulation, which helps deliver nutrients to recovering tissues and remove metabolic waste products. It also maintains neuromuscular activation patterns and prevents the stiffness that comes from complete rest. Elite performers use specific protocols for active recovery that are tailored to their performance demands. Athletes might engage in light swimming, walking, or yoga. Mental performers might use meditation, gentle stretching, or breathing exercises. The key is choosing activities that promote recovery without adding stress. The second component of the recovery and optimization loop is psychological recovery. Peak performance is as mentally demanding as it is physically demanding. Your attention, decision-making capacity, emotional regulation, and stress tolerance all become depleted during intense performance periods. Psychological recovery requires systematic approaches to restoring mental energy and processing performance experiences. The first element is attention restoration. Extended focus depletes your attentional resources, just like extended exercise depletes your physical energy. Elite performers use specific techniques to restore attentional capacity. This includes meditation practices that allow the focused attention network to rest while maintaining awareness, nature exposure that provides the kind of effortless attention that restores focused attention capacity and engaging in activities that require different types of attention than their primary performance domain. Research shows that spending time in natural environments, even for just 20 minutes, can significantly restore depleted attention resources. The soft fascination provided by natural settings allows your focused attention network to recover, while your default mode network engages in restorative processing. Elite performers also engage in what researchers call attention-switching activities pursuits that engage different attention networks than those used during peak performance. If their performance requires sustained focused attention, they might engage in creative activities that use diffuse attention. If their performance requires narrow focus, they might engage in activities that require broad awareness. The key is understanding which attention networks are depleted by your specific type of performance, and then engaging in activities that rest those networks while activating others. This creates more complete and efficient attention recovery than passive rest alone. The second element of psychological recovery is emotional processing. Peak performance often involves intense emotional experiences. Success, failure, pressure, excitement, disappointment, and satisfaction all create emotional residue that must be processed and integrated. Elite performers have developed systematic approaches to emotional processing. They use journaling to identify and process emotional experiences. They engage in discussions with coaches or mentors to gain perspective on emotional challenges. And they use mindfulness techniques to observe and accept emotional experiences without being overwhelmed by them. Emotional processing is crucial because unprocessed emotions from previous performances can interfere with future performance. If you haven't fully processed the disappointment from a previous setback, that emotional residue can create anxiety or self-doubt in future pressure situations. If you haven't integrated the lessons from a previous success, you might become complacent or overconfident. Elite performers use specific techniques for emotional processing. Reflective journaling helps them identify and articulate their emotional experiences. This process of putting emotions into words activates brain regions responsible for emotional regulation and helps integrate emotional experiences. They also engage in what psychologists call emotional debriefing, structured conversations with trusted advisors about their emotional experiences during performance. This external processing helps them gain perspective and insights that might not emerge from internal reflection alone. Mindfulness practices help elite performers observe their emotions without becoming reactive to them. They learn to notice emotional states without being controlled by them, which creates space for conscious choice about how to respond to emotional experiences. The third element is cognitive processing. Performance experiences contain enormous amounts of information about what worked, what didn't work, and what could be improved. Elite performers systematically extract and organize this information during recovery periods. This includes performance analysis sessions where they objectively review what happened during performance, identifying specific patterns and lessons that can inform future performance, and updating their mental models and strategies based on new information gained during performance. Cognitive processing is different from emotional processing, though they often occur together. While emotional processing focuses on feelings and internal experiences, cognitive processing focuses on information, patterns, and learning opportunities. Elite performers use structured approaches to cognitive processing. They conduct what researchers call performance post-mortems, systematic analyses of what happened during performance and why. These sessions are fact-based rather than emotional, focusing on identifying specific factors that contributed to success or failure. They also engage in pattern recognition, looking for recurring themes across multiple performances. This helps them identify systematic strengths to leverage and weaknesses to address. They understand that individual performance experiences are data points in larger patterns that reveal important information about their capabilities and development needs. Strategic thinking update is another crucial component of cognitive processing. Elite performers regularly update their mental models and strategies based on new information gained through performance. They don't just repeat the same approaches indefinitely. They continuously refine their thinking based on evidence. The third component of the recovery and optimization loop is systematic optimization. Elite performers don't just recover to their previous level. They use recovery periods to become better than they were before. They treat every recovery period as an opportunity for systematic improvement. This optimization process is based on the principle that peak performance reveals both strengths and weaknesses. During intense performance, you discover what you do well and what needs improvement. Recovery periods provide the time and mental space to address those development opportunities. The first element of optimization is skill refinement. Elite performers use recovery periods to work on specific skills that need improvement. Rather than trying to improve everything at once, they focus on the one or two most important areas for development. This focused skill development during recovery is often more effective than skill development during high-intensity training periods because the mind and body are fresh and capable of learning new patterns without the fatigue that interferes with skill acquisition. Elite performers identify skill development priorities through systematic performance analysis. They look for patterns in their performance data to identify the skills that would have the greatest impact on future performance if improved. They then create specific development protocols for addressing those skills during recovery periods. This might involve technical practice, mental rehearsal, or study of how other elite performers approach those same skills. The key is focusing on skill development that directly translates to performance improvement. Elite performers don't work on skills just because they're interesting or because others suggest them. They work on skills because analysis shows they will create meaningful performance improvements. The second element is system enhancement. Elite performers continuously refine the systems and processes that support their performance. They analyze what worked well and what could be improved in their preparation, execution, and recovery processes. This might involve refining pre-performance routines, updating training methods, improving equipment or technology, or developing better support systems. Elite performers understand that small improvements in their systems compound over time into significant performance advantages. System enhancement requires what researchers call systematic thinking, the ability to see how individual components work together to create overall performance. Elite performers don't just optimize individual elements. They optimize the relationships between elements. They regularly conduct what business researchers call system audits, comprehensive reviews of all the systems that support their performance. This includes preparation systems, training systems, recovery systems, support systems, and optimization systems. During these audits, they look for inefficiencies, gaps, and improvement opportunities. They ask questions like, what parts of my system are working well? What parts need improvement? What new components could enhance my system? How could existing components work better together? The third element is capacity building. Elite performers use recovery periods to systematically build their capacity for future performance. This includes developing physical capabilities that will support higher levels of performance, building mental skills that will enhance future decision-making and focus, and creating knowledge and experience that will inform future strategic thinking. Capacity building is different from skill refinement in that it focuses on fundamental capabilities rather than specific techniques. While skill refinement might involve improving a particular technical element, capacity building involves developing the underlying capabilities that support all skills. Physical capacity building might involve developing strength, endurance, flexibility, or coordination that will support future performance demands. Mental capacity building might involve developing attention span, stress tolerance, emotional regulation, or cognitive flexibility. Knowledge capacity building involves studying the strategic, tactical, and technical aspects of performance to develop deeper understanding that will inform future decision-making. Elite performers are continuous learners who use recovery periods to expand their knowledge base. The fourth component of the recovery and optimization loop is integration and preparation. Elite performers don't just transition randomly from recovery back to performance. They systematically integrate what they've learned and prepare for the next performance cycle. This integration process involves synthesizing insights gained during recovery into updated performance strategies, testing new skills and approaches in low-stakes environments before applying them in high-stakes situations, and gradually ramping up intensity to bridge the gap between recovery and full performance. The integration phase is crucial because new skills, insights, and optimizations must be integrated into existing performance systems without disrupting what already works well. Elite performers understand that integration requires careful planning and gradual implementation. They use what researchers call progressive integration, gradually incorporating new elements into their performance approach while maintaining proven elements. This might involve testing new techniques during low-pressure situations before using them in high-pressure moments. Elite performers also use this phase to mentally rehearse upcoming performances, incorporating lessons learned from previous performances and new capabilities developed during recovery. They don't just prepare physically for future performance, they prepare psychologically and strategically. Mental rehearsal during the integration phase involves visualizing how new skills and insights will be applied in upcoming performance situations. This mental practice helps integrate new elements into existing performance patterns and identifies potential challenges before they occur in real performance. The preparation component involves systematically building readiness for the next performance cycle. This includes physical preparation to ensure optimal physical state, mental preparation to ensure optimal psychological state, and strategic preparation to ensure optimal decision-making capability. Physical preparation involves gradually increasing training intensity from recovery levels back to peak performance levels. This progressive loading helps prevent injury while building readiness for high-intensity performance. Mental preparation involves re-engaging the psychological skills and mindset that peak performance requires. During recovery, elite performers often dial down their mental intensity to promote rest and restoration. The preparation phase involves systematically re-engaging mental intensity and focus. Strategic preparation involves reviewing and refining the game plans, tactics, and approaches that will be used in upcoming performance. This includes updating strategies based on lessons learned during recovery and optimization phases. The fifth component of the recovery and optimization loop is monitoring and assessment. Elite performers don't just assume their recovery and optimization processes are working. They systematically monitor and assess their effectiveness. This monitoring involves tracking both objective and subjective indicators of recovery and optimization. Objective indicators might include performance metrics, physiological measurements, or standardized assessments. Subjective indicators might include energy levels, motivation, confidence, or general well-being. Elite performers use what researchers call recovery dashboards, systematic approaches to tracking multiple indicators of recovery status. These dashboards help them identify when they're fully recovered and ready for peak performance, when they need additional recovery time, or when their recovery processes need adjustment. They also monitor the effectiveness of their optimization efforts by tracking improvements in specific capabilities over time. This might involve regular skill assessments, performance benchmarking, or capacity testing. The assessment component involves regularly evaluating the overall effectiveness of their recovery and optimization loop. Elite performers ask questions like, are my recovery processes adequately restoring my performance capacity? Are my optimization efforts producing meaningful improvements? Is my integration process effectively incorporating new capabilities into my performance? Based on these assessments, they make adjustments to their recovery and optimization protocols. They understand that these processes must evolve over time as their performance demands change and as they discover more effective approaches. The sixth component is periodization and cycling. Elite performers understand that recovery and optimization needs change over time based on performance demands, development phases, and life circumstances. They use systematic periodization to optimize their recovery and optimization loop for different situations. This might involve different recovery protocols for different types of performance, varying optimization focuses based on development priorities, or adjusting the balance between recovery and optimization based on upcoming performance demands. Elite performers also understand that the recovery and optimization loop must be sustainable over time. They can't maintain maximum intensity in all components indefinitely. They use strategic cycling to emphasize different components at different times while maintaining overall system effectiveness. Periodization involves planning recovery and optimization cycles around performance schedules. During heavy performance periods, they might emphasize recovery over optimization. During lighter performance periods, they might emphasize optimization over recovery. They also periodize their optimization focus, concentrating on different types of improvement during different phases of their development. This prevents overwhelming themselves with too many optimization goals while ensuring continuous improvement over time. The key to making the recovery and optimization loop work is treating it as seriously as you treat performance itself. Most people put enormous effort into performing, but minimal effort into recovering and optimizing. Elite performers invest equally in all phases of the performance cycle. This requires developing the discipline to maintain recovery protocols even when you don't feel like you need them, the patience to allow adequate time for full recovery even when you're eager to perform again, and the systematic thinking to consistently optimize during recovery periods rather than just resting passively. The result of implementing the complete recovery and optimization loop is what researchers call sustainable peak performance. Instead of having occasional moments of excellence followed by periods of decline, you develop the ability to consistently perform at or near your peak capacity. More importantly, you develop the ability to continuously improve over time rather than just maintaining your current level. Each performance cycle becomes slightly better than the previous one because you're systematically optimizing during every recovery period. This is how elite performers maintain excellence over years or even decades, rather than just months. They understand that peak performance is not about burning bright and burning out. It's about building sustainable systems that support continuous excellence. The recovery and optimization loop also creates what psychologists call anti-fragile development, the ability to become stronger and more capable through exposure to performance demands rather than being worn down by them. While most people are depleted by intense performance, elite performers use intense performance as fuel for systematic improvement. This anti-fragile quality comes from understanding that every performance experience provides valuable information and development opportunities. Instead of seeing intense performance as something that depletes you, you see it as something that provides the raw material for becoming better. The recovery and optimization loop is your blueprint for joining the ranks of performers who don't just achieve excellence once, but who make excellence a sustainable way of operating. The question is, are you ready to make recovery and optimization as systematic as your performance itself? Because once you master this loop, you'll discover that there's no upper limit to how good you can become. Every performance becomes a stepping stone to higher levels of capability. Every recovery period becomes an opportunity for systematic improvement. Every optimization cycle builds capacity for future excellence. The elite performers who dominate their fields for decades, rather than years, have all mastered some version of this loop. They understand that sustained excellence requires not just the ability to perform, but the ability to systematically recover from performance and optimize their capabilities over time. This is the difference between being good once and being great consistently. This is how you transform from someone who occasionally performs well to someone who reliably operates at peak levels. The recovery and optimization loop is the engine that drives sustained peak performance. Chapter 6. The Champion's Psychology, Long-Term Excellence Mindset. There's a moment in every high performer's journey when they face a crucial choice. Will they be satisfied with temporary success, or will they commit to building lasting excellence? This decision separates those who achieve brief moments of greatness from those who sustain greatness over years, decades, and entire careers. The psychology of long-term excellence is fundamentally different from the psychology of short-term achievement. Short-term success can be driven by motivation, inspiration, or intense effort. Long-term excellence requires something much deeper and more sustainable, a complete transformation in how you think about success, progress, and your own potential. Most people think in terms of goals and achievements. They set targets, work toward them, achieve them, and then either set new targets or lose momentum. This goal-oriented thinking creates a psychological pattern that actually prevents sustained excellence. Periods of intense effort followed by periods of relaxation, celebration followed by complacency, achievement followed by plateau. Elite performers who sustain excellence over time operate from a completely different psychological framework. They think in terms of identity, systems, and continuous evolution, rather than goals, achievements, and destinations. They understand that lasting excellence is not something you achieve, it's something you become. Understanding the champion's psychology requires first recognizing why most high achievers fail to sustain their excellence over time. The research on this phenomenon is both clear and sobering. Most people who achieve significant success in any field fail to maintain that level of performance for more than a few years. This failure to sustain excellence isn't due to lack of talent, resources, or opportunity. It's due to psychological factors that undermine long-term performance. The very success that people work so hard to achieve often becomes the enemy of continued excellence. The first psychological trap is destination thinking. Most people pursue success as if it's a destination they can reach and then relax. They work intensely toward a goal, achieve it, and then naturally reduce their effort because they feel they've made it. This destination thinking is psychologically appealing because it promises that intense effort is temporary, but it's fatal to sustained excellence. Elite performers understand that excellence is not a destination, it's a direction. There is no point at which you can stop growing, improving, and challenging yourself while maintaining peak performance. The moment you think you've arrived, you begin the process of decline. The second trap is achievement addiction. Many high achievers become psychologically dependent on the emotional highs that come from reaching goals and receiving recognition. They chase bigger and bigger achievements to recreate those emotional highs. But this addiction to achievement creates an unsustainable cycle that eventually leads to burnout or disappointment. Elite performers derive their satisfaction from the process of improvement rather than from external achievements. They find fulfillment in daily growth, systematic progress, and the pursuit of mastery itself. This process-based satisfaction is infinitely renewable, unlike achievement-based satisfaction, which requires constantly escalating accomplishments. The third trap is identity confusion. Many successful people build their identity around their achievements rather than around their character and values. When their performance inevitably fluctuates, their sense of self fluctuates with it. This creates psychological instability that makes sustained excellence extremely difficult. Elite performers build their identity around their commitment to excellence, their values, and their growth process, rather than around specific achievements. This creates psychological stability that supports sustained high performance regardless of temporary fluctuations in results. The champion's psychology is built on 7 core principles that create and sustain long-term excellence. Master these principles, and you'll develop the mental framework that allows elite performers to maintain their edge not just for months or years, but for entire careers. The first principle is identity-based performance. Most people base their identity on their achievements. I am successful because I accomplished this goal. Elite performers base their achievements on their identity. I accomplished this goal because I am the type of person who commits to excellence. This identity-based approach creates a completely different relationship with performance. When your identity is tied to your achievements, you're only as good as your last success. When your achievements flow from your identity, every performance is simply an expression of who you are. Elite performers develop what researchers call process identity rather than outcome identity. They don't see themselves as someone who won this competition. They see themselves as someone who commits to excellence every day. They don't identify as someone who achieved this goal. They identify as someone who systematically improves over time. This process identity creates psychological stability that allows for sustained high performance. When you have a bad day or a disappointing result, it doesn't threaten your sense of self because your identity is based on your commitment to the process, not on any particular outcome. Building process identity requires consciously choosing who you want to become and then consistently acting in ways that reinforce that identity. Every action you take either strengthens or weakens your identity as an elite performer. Elite performers are ruthlessly consistent in taking actions that align with their process identity. This means making choices based on identity rather than convenience. Instead of asking, "What do I feel like doing?" they ask, "What would someone committed to excellence do in this situation?" Instead of making decisions based on short-term pleasure, they make decisions based on long-term identity reinforcement. The process of building process identity involves several specific practices. First is identity clarification, clearly defining what it means to be someone committed to excellence in your domain. This involves identifying the specific behaviors, attitudes, and commitments that characterize elite performers in your field. Second is behavioral alignment, consistently taking actions that align with your process identity even when you don't feel like it. This creates what psychologists call behavioral evidence that reinforces your identity as an elite performer. Third is identity reinforcement, regularly reminding yourself of your process identity and celebrating actions that align with it. This helps maintain psychological consistency and motivation for continued identity-based behavior. The second principle is infinite game thinking. This concept, developed by philosopher James Cars, distinguishes between two types of games: finite games, which are played to win, and infinite games, which are played to keep playing. Most people approach performance as a finite game. They're trying to win, beat others, or achieve specific outcomes. Once they win or achieve their goals, the game is over, and motivation naturally decreases. Elite performers approach performance as an infinite game. They're not trying to win, they're trying to keep improving and keep playing at the highest level possible. Infinite game thinking creates what psychologists call intrinsic motivation that comes from the activity itself rather than from external rewards. When you're playing an infinite game, the joy comes from the process of improvement, not from beating others or achieving specific targets. This intrinsic motivation is what allows elite performers to maintain their drive even after they've achieved everything they originally wanted. They're not motivated by winning, they're motivated by becoming. They're not driven by achievement, they're driven by growth. Infinite game thinking also creates what researchers call competitive transcendence. Instead of being motivated by beating others, you're motivated by expressing your highest potential. This creates more sustainable motivation because it doesn't depend on external circumstances or other people's performance. The practical application of infinite game thinking involves several mindset shifts. First is shifting from outcome goals to process goals. Instead of focusing on achieving specific results, you focus on consistently engaging in the processes that create excellent results. Second is shifting from comparative thinking to personal excellence thinking. Instead of measuring yourself against others, you measure yourself against your own potential and previous performance. Third is shifting from terminal thinking to continuous thinking. Instead of seeing goals as endpoints, you see them as milestones in an ongoing journey of development. The third principle is systematic progression. Elite performers who sustain excellence understand that improvement is not linear or random, it's systematic. They don't just hope they'll get better over time, they engineer improvement through systematic approaches to skill development, knowledge acquisition, and capacity building. Systematic progression requires thinking in terms of developmental phases rather than individual performances. Elite performers map out multi-year development plans that identify the specific capabilities they need to build and the systematic approaches they'll use to build them. This long-term thinking prevents the common trap of trying to improve everything at once. Instead of overwhelming themselves with too many development goals, elite performers focus intensely on the few most important areas for growth during each phase of their development. The systematic progression process involves several key components. First is capability assessment, regularly evaluating your current capabilities across all dimensions of performance. This includes technical skills, mental skills, physical capabilities, and strategic understanding. Second is gap analysis, identifying the specific capabilities you need to develop to reach the next level of performance. This involves comparing your current capabilities to the requirements of higher-level performance. Third is development planning, creating systematic plans for building the capabilities identified in your gap analysis. This includes specific development activities, timelines, and success metrics. Fourth is progressive implementation, systematically executing your development plans while monitoring progress and making adjustments as needed. Systematic progression also requires what researchers call patience with process. Elite performers understand that meaningful improvement takes time and can't be rushed. They're willing to invest months or years developing specific capabilities because they know that compound improvement creates exponential long-term results. This patience with process is one of the most challenging aspects of the champion's psychology, because it goes against the natural human desire for immediate gratification. It requires maintaining long-term focus while working on improvements that won't pay off immediately. The fourth principle is adaptive excellence. The world changes constantly, and what creates excellent performance today may not create excellent performance tomorrow. Elite performers who sustain excellence over time have learned to continuously adapt their approaches while maintaining their core commitment to excellence. Adaptive excellence requires what psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to change your thinking and approaches when circumstances change. Elite performers regularly challenge their own assumptions, seek out new information, and experiment with different methods. This doesn't mean changing randomly or abandoning what works. Adaptive excellence is about maintaining your principles while evolving your practices. Elite performers have learned to distinguish between their unchanging commitment to excellence and their evolving methods for achieving excellence. The adaptive excellence process involves several key practices. First is environmental scanning, regularly monitoring changes in your performance environment that might require adaptations to your approach. Second is assumption testing, regularly challenging your beliefs about what creates excellent performance and testing new approaches. Third is experimental implementation, systematically testing new methods and approaches while carefully monitoring their effects on performance. Fourth is integration and refinement, incorporating successful adaptations into your standard approach while discarding unsuccessful experiments. Adaptive excellence also requires intellectual humility, the understanding that your current knowledge and methods are not complete or perfect. Elite performers actively seek out information that challenges their current approaches and aren't threatened by the possibility that they need to change. This intellectual humility creates what researchers call learning orientation, a mindset that prioritizes growth and adaptation over being right or maintaining the status quo. The fifth principle is legacy consciousness. Elite performers who sustain excellence think beyond their own performance to the impact they want to have on their field, their community, and future generations. This legacy consciousness creates motivation that transcends personal achievement. Legacy consciousness is not about ego or wanting to be remembered. It's about understanding that sustained excellence creates value that extends far beyond your own performance. Elite performers are motivated by the opportunity to push the boundaries of what's possible in their field, to inspire others to pursue excellence, and to leave their domain better than they found it. This long-term perspective creates what researchers call transpersonal motivation that comes from serving something larger than yourself. This type of motivation is more sustainable than personal motivation because it doesn't depend on your own success or satisfaction. Legacy consciousness also creates what psychologists call stewardship mindset. Elite performers see themselves as temporary guardians of excellence in their field, responsible for advancing the state of the art and passing on what they've learned to future performers. The practical application of legacy consciousness involves several specific practices. First is impact awareness, regularly considering how your performance and behavior affects others and contributes to your field. Second is knowledge sharing, actively sharing what you've learned with others who can benefit from your insights and experience. Third is standard setting, consistently performing at levels that inspire others and demonstrate what's possible with commitment to excellence. Fourth is mentorship and development, investing time and energy in developing the next generation of performers in your field. The sixth principle is resilience architecture. Sustaining excellence over time requires the ability to withstand setbacks, failures, and challenges without losing your commitment to excellence. Elite performers have learned to build psychological resilience that allows them to bounce back from adversity stronger than before. Resilience architecture involves systematically developing the mental and emotional capabilities that support long-term persistence in the face of challenges. This is different from natural toughness or simply powering through difficulties. Elite performers understand that resilience is not about avoiding failure or setbacks. It's about developing the capacity to recover from them quickly and use them as fuel for improvement. They see challenges as opportunities to strengthen their resilience rather than as threats to their success. The resilience architecture process involves several key components. First is stress tolerance building, systematically exposing yourself to manageable levels of stress and challenge to build your capacity for handling adversity. Second is failure recovery protocols, developing specific processes for bouncing back from setbacks and extracting learning from failure experiences. Third is emotional regulation skills, building the ability to maintain emotional stability and clear thinking, even when facing significant challenges. Fourth is support system development, creating networks of relationships that provide encouragement, perspective, and assistance during difficult periods. Resilience architecture also involves what researchers call anti-fragile thinking, the ability to become stronger through exposure to stress rather than being weakened by it. Elite performers learn to use challenges as opportunities for growth rather than as obstacles to overcome. The seventh principle is continuous renewal. Elite performers who sustain excellence understand that maintaining peak performance over time requires regular renewal of motivation, energy, and purpose. They don't just rely on their initial enthusiasm, they systematically renew their commitment to excellence. Continuous renewal involves regularly reconnecting with your deeper motivations for pursuing excellence, refreshing your sense of purpose and meaning, and revitalizing your energy and enthusiasm for your performance domain. This renewal process is necessary because the daily demands of pursuing excellence can sometimes obscure the larger reasons why you chose this path. Elite performers regularly step back to reconnect with their fundamental motivations and to renew their sense of purpose. The continuous renewal process involves several key practices. First is purpose reflection. Regularly examining why you pursue excellence and how your performance contributes to meaningful outcomes. Second is motivation refreshing. Reconnecting with the intrinsic satisfactions that come from pursuing excellence and growth. Third is energy management. Systematically managing your physical, mental, and emotional energy to maintain enthusiasm and vitality for your pursuits. Fourth is experience diversification, occasionally engaging in new experiences that provide fresh perspectives and renewed appreciation for your primary performance domain. These 7 principles work together to create what researchers call sustainable motivation, the psychological fuel that allows elite performers to maintain their commitment to excellence over decades rather than months. This sustainable motivation is not based on external rewards, temporary inspiration, or competitive drive. It's based on a fundamental commitment to becoming the best version of yourself over time. Building the champion psychology requires making a fundamental shift from achievement-oriented thinking to development-oriented thinking. Instead of asking, "What do I want to achieve?" elite performers ask, "Who do I want to become?" Instead of focusing on winning, they focus on improving. Instead of trying to reach a destination, they commit to a journey. This shift is not easy because it requires giving up the psychological rewards that come from achievement-based thinking. It requires finding satisfaction in the process rather than in the outcomes. It requires measuring yourself by your commitment to growth rather than by your accomplishments. But this shift is also liberating because it frees you from the psychological roller coaster of achievement-based thinking. Instead of your sense of worth going up and down based on your latest results, your sense of worth becomes based on your consistent commitment to excellence. The champion's psychology also creates what researchers call performance sustainability. Instead of experiencing the boom and bust cycles that characterize most high achievers, you develop the ability to maintain consistently high performance over extended periods. This sustainability comes from understanding that excellence is not something you achieve and then maintain through willpower. Excellence is something you become through systematic development of the psychological capabilities that support sustained high performance. The champion's psychology is not just about sustaining high performance. It's about continuously evolving to higher levels of performance over time. Elite performers who develop this psychology don't just maintain their edge, they sharpen their edge continuously. Most importantly, the champion's psychology allows you to find deep satisfaction and meaning in the pursuit of excellence itself, regardless of what you achieve. The journey becomes as rewarding as any destination because you've learned to find fulfillment in the process of becoming excellent. This is the ultimate secret of sustained peak performance. When excellence becomes who you are rather than what you do, it becomes sustainable indefinitely. You no longer have to maintain motivation for excellence because excellence has become your natural expression. The question is, are you ready to think like a champion? Because once you develop the champion's psychology, mediocrity becomes impossible and excellence becomes inevitable. Your transformation from someone who occasionally performs well to someone who consistently performs at their peak begins with embracing these 7 principles. Excellence is not a destination. It's a way of traveling. The champion's psychology is your roadmap for making that journey sustainable, meaningful, and continuously rewarding over the course of your entire career and life. Your peak performance potential is not limited by your current abilities. It's limited only by your willingness to embrace the psychology that creates and sustains excellence over time. Elite performers have shown what's possible when you commit to becoming excellent rather than just achieving excellence. The path is clear. The principles are proven. The only question remaining is, what level of excellence are you ready to commit to becoming? Because once you make that commitment and begin implementing the champion psychology, there's no limit to what you can achieve and become.